On the KPBS Roundtable today, history is made as the Supreme Court allows marriage between same-sex couples to stand. And creditors are circling what's left of San Diego Hospice in bankruptcy court as possible criminal charges loom. Plus, the military cites climate change as a vital national security issue and leads the way on alternative energy, buttressing President Obama's landmark speech on the subject. I'm Mark Sauer, and the KPBS Roundtable starts now. Joining me at the KPBS Roundtable today are Tom Sensi, political columnist for 429 Magazine, Joanne Farian, investigative reporter for iNewsSource, and Susan White, editor of Inside Climate News. Let's begin with the historic rulings by the U.S. Supreme Court this week. On a 5-4 votes, the justices declared the Defense of Marriage Act passed during the second Clinton administration was unconstitutional. And on a technicality, the court let stand a lower ruling that overturned California's Proposition 8, which banned same-sex marriage. Taken together, the rulings were seen as a victory for the LGBT community and supporters who view same-sex marriage as a matter of civil rights. Tom Sensi, let's start with Prop 8. Tell us about that technicality in which they overturned that.
Thanks, Mark. You want to talk about Prop 8 first?
You bet.
Proposition 8 was overturned on a technicality. As you said, that technicality was the fact that the United States Supreme Court in a 5-4 ruling decided that the parties, the plaintiffs, did not have standing. They had no injury. Mm-hmm. They had more than a year and a half to come up with just a single example of how they were injured by other people's marriages.
And they couldn't do it. And we should remind folks, these plaintiffs that came forth were the backers of Prop 8 here in California.
They were. Well, it was a consortium. I mean, the case was embodied in plaintiffs, individual plaintiffs. Hollingsworth versus Perry was a case that I think it really brought home the fact that the biggest threat to marriage is divorce. It's not more marriage. And I think
whether it's same-sex couples or heterosexual couples, I mean, it's divorce.
And weren't the backers the plaintiffs because the government refused to defend Prop 8? Isn't that?
Well, true. When the Brown administration came into office and Kamala Harris became our Attorney General in California, there was, let's just say, a lack of will to enforce Proposition 8 and fight for its survival. And thanks to the fact that we have people in office at this moment who care about the freedom to marry, and it is an issue of liberty, and it's an issue of equal justice and equal rights. It's a very simple all-American issue. You can't get more all-American than wanting to marry the person you love.
Go ahead, Susan.
One of the most interesting things, yesterday we were driving in our neighborhood. We live in North Park, and there was a gay flag in a front yard and a We Love America, mm-hmm. a Proud to be an American sign, and it's touching. I mean, it touches you. You know, that flag you're talking about, a lot of people call it the gay flag. I did for years, and then I thought it was called the Pride flag. It's actually called, the guy who designed that flag in the early 70s, I think it may even have been 1970, it's called the Freedom flag. Oh, how wonderful.
Those are all the colors of the rainbow, and I think that flag today especially belongs to all of us as Americans.
That's wonderful.
It'll never replace the red, white, and blue, the stars and stripes, which I would not want to happen, but I have no problem with it flying right underneath our Old Glory.
There has been some backlash, though, to the reporting. I heard yesterday on NPR, a study was saying that how has the media sort of portrayed this decision, as you say, as being a victory, right. and there has been sort of an issue with that in terms of, are we hearing the opposition?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could, when you do a story about the Voting Rights Act, you could have the KKK on too if you wanted, mm-hmm. and give them equal time. But there comes a point where you just kind of scratch your head and say, no, that's enough airtime for hate.
Mm-hmm. Now, we're going to get into a lot of these issues in a moment. Let me ask you, I don't know if it's a housekeeping thing, but the California Appeals Court said Wednesday it would wait at least 25 days before allowing same-sex marriages here in California. What's the reason for that?
That's a United States Supreme Court norm. I believe, and I'm not a lawyer, but I believe that it's actually in the Constitution that the federal government shall have 25 days to do all of the, as you said, housekeeping, change the forms.
Although I think our Attorney General Kamala Harris did say if you can do it sooner, she'd like to see it immediately.
She's been pretty vociferous about the fact that she sees no reason to wait here in California, especially on Prop 8.
Now,
It's a boost
that's
to the economy, right?
Right.
It's a big boost to the
Oh,
economy.
right.
I was seeing the numbers
Right.
last night.
I mean, yeah.
Weddings and
Divorce lawyers.
Yeah, divorce lawyers.
We're not immune to that either.
Getting ahead
Welcome
of
to all
ourselves.
the trappings of marriage.
Right.
But yeah, and you know the real point, I think the most exciting thing for gays, lesbians, bi Americans, bisexual Americans is that now we have the 1,138 rights and privileges and protections that the federal government affords to all married couples. At least here in California and in other states where same-sex marriage is legal.
Now you're talking about the other ruling that came down this
DOMA.
week on the same day. Yeah, explain what DOMA is and how that differs from the California issue we were talking
Okay,
about.
DOMA. DOMA was passed in 1996 and signed by President Bill Clinton. It was the Defense of Marriage Act, and the court found that it violated the Fifth Amendment. And this, whereas the Proposition 8 ruling was not across the usual 5-4 liberal conservative political divide, if you want to call it that, in the Supreme Court. However, DOMA was straight down the line.
Justice Kennedy being the swing vote.
Kennedy, being the swing vote, and what it does is this ruling requires the federal government to afford same-sex couples all of the same sort of social security benefits, survivors benefits, military benefits, and interestingly, the military is ahead of the curve on this one, and I think that they stand better prepared to begin sharing benefits with their same-sex married couple military families.
What happens if you're in a state that doesn't allow same-sex marriage? What happens to your federal benefits?
You know what? Let me answer it this way. The federal benefits, let's say you're in Mississippi and you go to the Social Security office there, you are to be treated as any other person, other couple would be. However, if you're in a hospital in Mississippi and the family does not want you to see your husband, if you're a gay man with a husband, the way I understand it, that means that family can prevent you from seeing. Although that might violate HIPAA, I'm not an attorney, but I'm pretty sure that that's the case. The state is not required to afford you state rights, and that's still our challenge. There's much work to be done.
Let's talk. Go ahead.
Can't you see a lot of court cases arising from this in those
Right.
states? I can see a lot of smaller cases because, say you're in California, you're married and you have everything, you go to one of these other states and you're stuck in a hospital and you can't have access, then it seems to me that you have a court case that might set precedent. In that state.
I think it sets up a situation.
Well, as we say, there's going to be a lot of legal challenges and twists and turns. Let's talk for a minute about the cultural shift on same-sex marriage. Defense of Marriage Act passed by a big bipartisan vote and signed by a Democratic president, Bill Clinton, since said he regrets it. And Prop 8 in California years after that. What's happened since then? With Prop 8 passed today, what's the mood in the nation and in the state?
No, I can confidently tell you that Proposition 8 would not pass. USC and the LA Times did a poll just a few weeks ago, and that poll revealed that only 32% of Californians oppose same-sex marriage. Nationally, 51% of the U.S. population of voting age support equal.
So that poll says
equality.
it's reached a tipping point.
We have, and I don't know if that's a generational thing alone. I think that there has been, as you said, Mark, a cultural shift. I think more people have come out of the closet. I think people have been exposed, thanks to the good work of organizations like HRC and GLAAD, have been exposed to more positive LGBT role models in the media.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there on these historic rulings and turn to another issue in the news this week. In February, San Diego Hospice filed for bankruptcy, and that was in the wake of a 2-year federal investigation. The allegation is that the facility had long accepted and billed Medicare for patients who were not eligible for care. The news this week is that the feds want their money back, and federal prosecutors are also looking at criminal charges in this case. Joanne Farron, you spent months researching and investigating this story. Tell us what's happening in the latest news and remind us what's going on, what the high points are of this case.
Well, we finally got a number, and that's sort of what's been in the news recently. A lot of the reporting in past months has really been about this audit, but the audit was never released. So we got a number filed in court documents that basically said the federal government believes it's owed $112 million for ineligible patients, and they only looked at 2 years, 2009 and 2010. So this San Diego Hospice was about between an $80 and $90 million business. Most of their money comes from the federal government. So, I mean, do quick math, it looks like they're saying about half your patients weren't eligible. So they're asking for this $112 million.
Now, how likely is it the feds or anybody else, they're not the only ones in line here, right?
Yeah, not likely. So let's put some context here. So the remaining assets for San Diego Hospice is really $16 million. It's their building that they have sold to Scripps. So $16 million right now to be divided among hundreds, if not thousands, right? You've got former employees who say, look, we weren't given notice. We want 60 days notice. We want paychecks. You've got banks, healthcare companies, and you've got attorneys, and they're first in line, right? You've got to collect their money. So the federal government is in that lineup as well. I spoke with some of the attorneys involved in this case. They believe they'll get some of the money, but obviously, $112 million, they're not going to see very much of it.
No.
And what's the process now? Who gets what and how does that work?
Well, it's really complicated bankruptcy law, and that's what's happening in the courts right now. It's a tiered system, right? Are you a secured creditor? Are you unsecured? There's a committee that goes through all of the claims. I was in bankruptcy court earlier this week when a lot of this was being talked about. There's another hearing in August. It's not likely anyone's really going to see any money from this until next year.
Aren't the people who are owed back pay, aren't they tops on that list?
I don't know. That's one of the things that's being debated, right? Who's in the line first? What's the order?
Big
and that's
decision
one of the
in bankruptcy court on how that works and who
I mean, I'm
Exactly.
guessing these are healthcare workers. These are sort of working class people who need their paychecks.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Low-wage
Well,
workers,
what's at issue is the date when San Diego Hospice decided to basically close its doors, and the date that these employees were being told that they were losing their jobs. Did they get that 60-day notice? Because there's a law that says you have to have this notice. So that's going to play itself out as well in this whole process. I think the real big issue here, this isn't just a San Diego issue. So San Diego Hospice was the largest in California, one of the oldest in the country, and one of the most respected. Yeah. The federal government has been looking at hospice care across the country. There's a hospice in Delaware who was also being looked at for taking in ineligible patients. There was one in Arizona that actually settled with Medicare. The fact that now, too, that the federal government introduced in bankruptcy documents the idea that they're also looking at criminal charges. So this is also the big thing that we're hearing about, that they're suing civilly, right? They want their $112 million, but there's also that now this sort of criminal element that's being introduced to this as well.
Is it fraud? Is that the essence?
It would be under the Health Care Act, yes. Yes, that's the section of the criminal code.
The thing that has always bothered me is, or the question that I've always had, was this done because of an excess of compassion, or was it done because of greed?
Right. How did they get into this situation of having as many as half their patients not eligible?
Right.
Yeah.
That was the subject of a lot of our reporting, and I think a lot of things were going on at the same time. One of them was they wanted to do the right thing, and they did have, and we spoke to employees who we did protect their identities because they were afraid of criminal charges, who did say, look, we wanted to say yes and not no, and we tried to always find a way to say yes, we're going to accept you into care. And we saw their numbers grow too. They were caring for 1,000 patients at a time, and to put that in context, you might have other so-called large hospices caring for 200. So they had a lot of patients, right? So they were collecting a lot of money from Medicare.
I think you reported that they also had a lot of incidents of patients being released, going back home, or I guess in some cases to other hospices, but after 6 months of care actually were discharged, which isn't what we think of as the way hospice ends.
And they started doing that once the feds were kind of on their back. They started releasing they went through their books and they started releasing hospice patients that didn't quite fit the strict definition. That was according to their CEO. So they started releasing them. We actually found one couple, a woman who had Alzheimer's. she was under San Diego Hospice's care for 6 years. 6 years in
6
hospice.
years.
And just to let
So
people
what-
know,
yeah, what's the
6 months is
definition?
the
There you
definition. So
go.
Medicare's definition is if you have a terminal illness and you are likely to die in 6 months if you're illness continues on the same, progression, then you are eligible. What's happening is that definition was formed when people were with cancer. We're using hospice care, right? And you can diagnose when people are going to die with cancer
But
with
it's
a little
still
more
an
reliability.
inexact science
It's
and art,
inexact.
isn't
Even
And
then,
now,
yeah.
but even now, what we're seeing are people with Alzheimer's disease, people something called debility and decline, which basically means old age. They're now choosing hospice in greater numbers,
Interesting.
and it's much more difficult to predict when those people are going to die. And so hence you have this, 9 months, 15 months stay in hospice.
Is it maybe that they should change the definition?
Right,
Because
would a
isn't
case like
hospice
this-
is way cheaper than putting people in hospitals or intensive nursing situations. So maybe maybe it will turn out that they were doing the right thing, that the system needs to be changed.
I think we're hearing a lot from people, not just in this city at San Diego Hospice, but across the country suggesting that very thing.
Wondering, would any of this have to do with the improvement of treatment and care? I mean, are lives being extended
Yeah.
with terminal illnesses?
That's exactly part of this. There was a study done a few years back that's saying that when people get hospice care, which basically what that is, a nurse comes to your house. She makes sure you're taking medication.
Yeah.
She'll make sure you're eating right, that you have what you need. So that kind of
she's a
care,
human contact.
exactly, and that
Yeah.
kind of care can extend life. And this is in the research literature that yes, when you're getting that kind of care, it's possible that you're living longer.
Interesting.
Now, Joanne, you spoke with a board member of the San Diego Hospice earlier. What do they know about what's going
And I
on?
think that might be sort of a generous description. I tried to speak to the board member who it was really sad to be in bankruptcy court and see the CEO and a board member and some employees. Because this was a really big institution in this city. And so I did ask him for an interview. He didn't want to. I said, look, our audience has been following the story. You know that you have this great support from San Diego in terms of what hospice was doing. And he was clearly upset and just said, we're just going to take this as it comes. And he did indicate that the sort of possible criminal investigation did come as a surprise. Yeah.
Is there a bad guy in this? Is there an individual?
Oh, I don't know. I
Maybe
think
too soon to tell. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we don't know what we don't know,
Yeah.
right? We don't know why the federal government is looking into this sort of possible criminal element. I don't know. We spent a lot of time covering this. I think we've got to look at the system. And also, I think when you have a lot of people on a mission to do good and they really believe in it, sometimes is it misguided or sometimes maybe you need some checks and balances. I don't really know the answer to that
Last question. What's next in these proceedings now?
More court hearings in terms of deciding who gets their money and in what order. And it's probably, one attorney told me, it's probably no one will see any money until sometime next year. And then stay tuned in terms of this criminal investigation.
Exactly, both sides of it.
fascinating
All right,
story.
thanks. We'll have to leave it there on the hospice story. We turn now to an issue that truly has global reach, but one with a special impact here in San Diego County. A new report issued jointly by military analysts and planners from the U.S. and Great Britain states bluntly that national security depends on a halt to the burning of fossil fuels. The report buttresses President Obama's initiative this week to cut emissions from coal-fired power plants and other measures to fight global warming. Susan White, you published that story this week, Inside
Yes.
Climate News. What's our basic takeaway on this report in the story in the news this week?
That oil and gas are finite. And even though we're in the middle of a huge oil and gas boom in this country, it's amazing the amount of reserves we have because of new drilling techniques. However, it all goes away eventually. And if you're the military, you have to look long range, and you're not looking at this generation and the next generation. And it's, to me, if I don't know if you all saw the Dust Bowl series, Ken Burns,
Well, I did see
which was
part of
just
it.
absolutely wonderful. Well, you saw people pillaging the earth. All the things that people did to the soil at that time culminated in, it was a man-made disaster. And so to me, it seems as if we're acting as though, and it was the idea that if this land was used up, we could move on and get more land. Well, that doesn't happen. And if we're thinking about our
The planet, if the planet's used up, we're not going to move on.
There's nowhere to go. You have to have water to drink, and you have to have air that is relatively clean to breathe. And so the climate change question, I think, is the big question of our time. We were talking about this before. Everything else pales. You can have great rights. DOMA can be dissolved, but if you don't have a planet to live on...
Nowhere to enjoy those rights. That's kind of a moot point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, the authors of this report, in your story this week, they cite this fixation by America on becoming energy independent by expanding natural gas and oil drilling here, and they say that's, quote, misguided. What do they mean?
Well, they mean just what I said. You can drill your way out, but you can't drill your way into the future. And while they're drilling, they're making the climate the climate change move faster because they're adding more carbon to the air. And to me, what was interesting is this study was not done by lefty liberal tree huggers. This study was done by the U.S. Navy, a U.S. naval organization, and a British organization. The reporter who wrote this, Jack Cushman, and I are both Army brats, and he's based in Washington. But to us, the fact that generals are saying this, and the best quote, I marked this because I thought it really said it, and especially to Jack and me, because, as I said, we're Army brats.
You're of that culture,
Yeah, and this is retired retired Air Force General Charles Wald. And he was deputy commander of the U.S. European Command. Big guy. And he's not a lefty liberal tree hugger. His quote is...
Nothing against lefty liberal tree huggers.
No, there is nothing. But I think that's what's remarkable about
They don't reside
this.
in that culture.
Because these are military guys.
The military guy, and this is not coming from the environmental group.
All right, and what did he say?
He said, the biggest thing we could do right now to address climate change and its national security effects would be to decrease the amount of carbon we pump into the atmosphere. And the biggest thing we could do about that would be to have a comprehensive energy policy that addresses not only the amount and diversity of our energy, but how clean it is. And we have no national policy now.
Now, that raises a really interesting political issue because conservatives in Congress tend to be big supporters of the military, many bases in conservative districts in various parts of the country, here in California, of course. But as President Obama started talking about this week we're not going to have time for a debate of the Flat Earth Society, they're on the other side of this issue, many of them. So the politics are very intriguing.
It doesn't make sense either. It really doesn't. I read just before I came over a column that was written by a conservative, and he was saying the way to combat Obama's plans is for conservatives, it was really a breakthrough to accept the fact that the climate is changing. It can't be denied any longer.
Wait, so
he was saying that, which I thought was a really amazing...
Make sure I understand this. You're saying that the best for these conservatives who are global warming deniers, the best way for them to combat Obama is to accept that climate change is real?
Yes, accept that it's real, and to
and
shoot
work
down
within that regime.
and make sure that the solutions are within their framework. I think that's huge progress to me because we can't have people, we're paralyzed. And as we were talking before this, we did my organization, which is an online website, we did a book last year on Germany's Energiewende, which is Germany's energy revolution. And Germany has done miraculous things. They are heading toward a carbon-free and nuclear-free future. And they've already started down this path. They started in the 70s. But here in the United States, we don't have that common will. And so we have the president standing up and saying, here are all the things I can do without Congress.
But we need action by
Congress. But we need both.
And in the report, in the military analyst report, they're saying that's the only sustainable way is what Germany has done.
Yeah. Yes.
What are some of the specific things that they're warning about in terms of threats, in terms of national security threats here, as climate change gets worse and worse?
Well, if you think... poor countries where there's drought and they can't raise their crops.
Famine.
Are they famine? There could be flooding in some areas and drought in others. There is a situation that interests me between India and Pakistan, and there is a real debate over the water of the Indus River there. Well, if you have climate change and that water dries up, that's a place that some people have targeted as a potential war site anyway, because you have to have water.
So you're talking about desperate people getting displaced, doing what they can for food and water. I mean, basic issues of survival.
Well, one of the things has always interested me is right now we're trying to get as much fossil fuel as we can. But what happens when the shortage is in water and the debate is over how much water do we have? Even in our own country, that's going to be a scary thing, because you can live without your car, you could live without your heat. You cannot live without water.
All right, we're going to have to leave it right there. Fascinating discussion. That wraps up another week of the stories on the KPBS Roundtable. I'd like to thank my guests, Tom Sensi of 429 Magazine, Joanne Faryon of iNewsSource, and Susan White of Insight Climate News. A reminder, all of today's stories are available on kpbs.org. I'm Mark Sauer, Senior News Editor at KPBS. Thanks for joining us on the KPBS Roundtable.